Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something really fundamental.
Mhm.
It touches every part of our lives. And, well, if you're learning English, it's absolutely key to connecting with people.
Oh, definitely. Understanding and, talking about our emotions.
Exactly. Think of it as unlocking sort of a deeper level of communication.
Absolutely. And it's not just knowing the words, is it? It's getting the nuances, how they reflect what's going on inside,
Right.
and help us navigate, well, everything, really. Being able to say how you feel in English, it just opens up so much. Clearer conversations, more meaningful ones.
Totally agree. And we've got a great starting point for this, an English language learning resource. And it focuses right on this emotions vocabulary.
Good stuff.
So our mission today really is to dig into the practical language, the insights it offers,
Mhm.
so that you, our listener, can feel, more confident, more capable when you need to talk about your feelings in English.
And the plan is to look closely at some dialogues, pretty everyday stuff, and the vocabulary that pops up naturally. It's
Yeah.
all about seeing these words in action, right? How they fit into real conversations, not just um, memorizing definitions from a list.
Exactly, not just lists.
Okay.
Okay, so let's dive right in then. Our source material kicks off with, well, it's short, but it's quite telling, this conversation between Emma and Tom.
Yeah, it's a perfect little snapshot, isn't it? How we
But-
talk about feelings day to day. And it introduces some really fundamental vocabulary very naturally.
Okay, so the exchange starts. Emma notices something's up. She asks, "Hey, are you okay? You look a bit down."
Right.
And Tom responds, "Yeah, I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed with everything going on."
And boom, right there. Two short lines, and we've got two really common emotions word, down
Yeah.
and overwhelmed.
Yeah,
Such a typical way to start, isn't it? When you sense someone's not quite themselves.
it really is. Okay, so let's start with down. Our resource explains feeling down means, a little sad, maybe not in a great mood.
Yeah, not like deep despair or anything.
No, more like a dip, maybe, from how you usually feel. A
Yeah.
bit low, maybe lacking energy.
That's a good way to put it, a dip. It's definitely on the milder end of the sadness scale.
Right.
And the example sentence they give is, she's been feeling down since she failed the test.
That makes sense. Gives a clear situation, a trigger that could lead to feeling that way.
Exactly.
Now, thinking about, your own experience,
Hmm.
listener, have you felt down, maybe after, I don't know, a small disappointment or just a really long day, sometimes for no clear reason?
Mm-hmm.
How would you describe a time you felt that way? Trying to connect these words to your own life, it really helps them stick, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial. When you can link a word to something real, a personal memory, it stops being just a definition. It
Yeah.
becomes, something you truly understand and can actually use. It becomes active vocabulary.
Okay, so next up in that chat, Tom says he feels overwhelmed. What's that telling us? How's he feeling?
Overwhelmed. Yeah, that describes that feeling of just having too much going on, too much on your plate, too many demands, maybe too much information.
Right.
It's like your brain is just full. You might feel stressed or anxious, maybe even a bit stuck, paralyzed almost.
Yeah, like you can't cope with it all.
Exactly, that feeling of being unable to cope.
The example sentence is, I felt overwhelmed by all the work I had to do. I think pretty much everyone can relate to that one.
Unfortunately, yes.
That sense of this huge mountain of tasks, and you just don't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, listener, recall a time you felt overwhelmed? What was going on? Work, personal stuff, something else?
Yeah, it can come from anywhere. Like
Yeah.
you said, work deadlines, family things, trying to sort out a complex problem.
Or just too much information?
Or even just the sheer volume of stuff coming at us daily.
Yeah.
The common thing is that feeling of being overloaded, beyond what you can easily handle.
And notice how we often say, I feel overwhelmed, using feel plus the adjective.
Right, that feel plus adjective structure is super common for emotions. I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel overwhelmed.
Okay, moving through the dialogue. Emma shows she gets it. She says, I get that. I was really anxious before my last exam, but don't worry, you've got this.
Ah, okay. So now we have anxious.
Yeah, what does anxious mean here?
Well, anxious is that strong feeling of worry, maybe nervousness, and it often happens, like the example says, before something important or uncertain.
Like the exam.
Exactly. An exam, a job interview, maybe a big presentation. It's that feeling of unease, apprehension about what's coming.
Think about those moments. That flutter in your stomach, maybe. That restless feeling. Sometimes even trouble sleeping. Job interviews, like you said, public speaking, traveling somewhere new alone. These things often make people feel anxious. What about you, listener? What tends to make you feel Anxious.
It's interesting because worry is part of it, but anxious often feels a bit more intense, doesn't it? More persistent, maybe.
Yeah.
And it can even have physical signs, like you mentioned, the fluttery stomach, maybe a racing heart, sweaty palms. Have you noticed that yourself, those physical sensations?
Oh, for sure. Okay, so Tom then replies, trying to pull himself together a bit. He says, "Thanks. I'm trying to stay positive, but it's been tough lately."
Right. Two more useful words there. Positive and tough.
Well, let's unpack those. What's he telling us with positive and tough?
Okay, so positive here. It means trying to keep a hopeful outlook. Yeah. Trying to see the good side, even when things are difficult.
It's about resilience, optimism.
Exactly. Sometimes it's a conscious choice, focusing on potential good outcomes instead of just the problems.
Do you know someone who's just naturally positive?
Yeah.
Those people who can kind of lift your spirits?
Yeah, it's a great quality.
Yeah.
But like Tom says, sometimes you have to try to stay positive. It takes effort.
It really does. Which kind of leads us nicely into the next word he uses, tough.
Right. And the fact he says he's trying highlights that it isn't always automatic, especially when things are, well, tough.
So tough just means difficult, challenging, right?
Pretty much. When Tom says it's been tough lately, he's basically saying he's been going through a hard time. Facing difficulties, things haven't been easy.
It's quite a general way to put it.
It is. That phrase, "it's been tough lately," is super common. It lets you signal you're having difficulties without necessarily going into all the details.
Gives you a bit of privacy, but still communicates how things are.
Exactly. Listener, have you had a tough week recently? It's something we all experience, and we often use this kind of general language.
And finally, in this little exchange, Emma offers support. She says, "Let's grab some coffee and talk it out. You'll feel better."
Which is lovely, simple, but powerful, offering comfort, connection.
Yeah.
And it also kind of subtly highlights how important talking and, social support are when we're dealing with difficult feelings.
So true. Just talking can make a huge difference sometimes.
Definitely.
Okay, so just from that short chat between Emma and Tom, we've pulled out 5 really key emotion words. Down, overwhelmed, anxious, positive, and tough.
Mm-hmm. And we saw them used really naturally, didn't we, in normal conversation?
Which is so important for learners, right? It's not enough just to know the definition.
No way.
You need to get a feel for how it works in real time, how it sounds, how you actually use it.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
All right. So our source material then moves on, introduces another set of 5 emotion words, equally important, just as common.
Okay.
Let's check those out now. The first one in this second batch is excited. What's it mean to be excited?
Excited. That's usually a nice one. It's that happy, energetic feeling, right? When you're really looking forward to something great happening.
Yeah, anticipation, enthusiasm.
A feeling of joy, maybe?
Yeah.
Enthusiasm is a good word.
Yeah. The example sentence is spot on, simple. "I'm so excited about the trip." You can almost hear the energy in that, can't you?
You really can.
Yeah.
So, listener, what are you excited about right now? Maybe a holiday coming up, a new project, seeing people you care about.
It's definitely a forward-looking feeling, usually about something pleasant.
Can range from just mild anticipation to, like, real exhilaration.
Okay, next up, frustrated. I think this is another one most of us can relate to pretty easily.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to feel frustrated?
Well, frustrated is when you're feeling annoyed, maybe upset, even a bit angry,
Right.
because something isn't working the way you want it to, or you're hitting roadblocks. Can't achieve your goal.
Yeah, there's often that sense of helplessness, isn't there? Or lack of control, like you're banging your head against a wall.
Totally. The example given is, I felt frustrated when the app kept crashing.
Oh my goodness, yes. Anyone who uses tech knows that feeling.
Tell me about it. So listener, what else makes you feel frustrated? Slow internet, misunderstandings, trying to learn something new and just not getting it.
All good examples, very relatable. It's that feeling of being blocked, stopped, unable to make progress even though you're trying.
Yeah, it can be surprisingly intense frustration.
Okay, the third word in this set is relieved. Now, this is often a wonderful feeling. Usually comes after stress or anxiety. Ugh, yes, relieved. What does that mean?
Well, it's exactly that feeling of comfort, ease, maybe lightness that comes after stress or worry or difficulty has ended.
Like a weight lifting off your shoulders.
Yes, exactly. You can finally breathe again.
The example is, I was so relieved after I passed the test. You can just imagine that tension melting away.
Yeah, accomplishment mixed with the end of worry. Listener, can you remember a time you felt truly relieved? What was the situation?
It often follows that period of uncertainty or pressure, which makes the relief feel even stronger, more noticeable.
Definitely a welcome emotion.
Very much so.
Okay, next one. Embarrassed. This is a social one, isn't it? Tied to how we think others see us.
That's right. What does it mean to be embarrassed?
It means feeling awkward, maybe self-conscious, even a bit foolish, usually because of something you said or did.
Mm-hmm.
Something you think was maybe silly or inappropriate or just drew attention in a way you didn't want.
Yeah, that sense of being exposed or feeling like you made a social blunder.
The example is, he was embarrassed when he forgot the teacher's name. Oh, we've all been there, right?
Uh-huh. Probably.
That sudden heat in your face, wanting the ground to swallow you up. Think about a mildly embarrassing moment you've had, listener. It's super common, very human. Can be anything from a slight blush to, like, total mortification.
And the context matters hugely, doesn't it? What's slightly awkward in one situation might feel much worse in another. It's often about our perception of social rules and wanting to fit in.
True. Okay, finally, in this second set of words, we have grateful. This is a really positive, important one.
Absolutely. So what does it mean to feel grateful?
Grateful means feeling thankful, showing appreciation, usually for something positive. You've received a gift, kindness, help.
Or even just recognizing the good things you have in life generally.
Yeah, it's about acknowledging and valuing what you have or what others have done for you.
Mm-hmm. The example sentence. I'm grateful for your help with my project. That clearly shows it's often directed towards someone for their actions.
Right. So, listener, what are you currently grateful for? Taking a moment to actually think about that can really boost your mood, you know?
It absolutely can. It's an emotion that encourages positivity, strengthens relationships,
Yeah.
and just contributes to overall well-being. It shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have.
So, okay, we've now looked at 10 keywords. Down, overwhelmed, anxious, positive, tough.
Excited, frustrated, relieved, embarrassed, and grateful.
Right. And as we've talked about, each one has its own specific flavor, its own nuance.
And that nuance is just vital, isn't it, for communicating effectively?
Yeah.
Choosing the right word lets you be precise about your feelings.
So people understand you better.
Exactly. Reduces misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Just saying, I feel bad is so vague.
Totally.
It doesn't really tell anyone anything useful, but saying I feel frustrated or I feel down, those communicate very different things, invite different responses.
Precisely. And our source material actually goes a step further to help cement this learning. They have what they call an audio review section, which is basically a list of short, descriptive phrases paired up with the emotion word we've just discussed.
Yeah, it's a great way to hear the link, isn't it? Between a little description of a feeling and the specific word helps lock in that association.
Definitely.
Okay, let's run through these pairings then. First descriptive phrase is a little sad, and that connects directly to
Down.
yeah.
And the example sentence in this review bit is, she looked down after the meeting.
You can almost picture it, can't you? That slight visual cue of feeling low, lowered eyes, maybe posture.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It paints a little picture.
Okay, next. The phrase too much to handle naturally links to
Overwhelmed, the example. He felt overwhelmed by the responsibilities. Again, captures that feeling of being burdened, struggling to cope.
Then we have nervous or worried, which corresponds directly to
Anxious, example sentence. She gets anxious before public speaking. Very common trigger, as we said.
Following that, trying to see the good side neatly matches.
Positive, an example. Even in bad times, he stays positive, which really highlights that effort, that resilience we talked about.
Next up, difficult or challenging clearly points to
Tough, example.
yeah.
It's been a tough week at work. Concise, widely understood way to say things have been hard.
Okay, moving to some happier ones. Very happy and looking forward to something is a great description of.
Excited, example. I'm excited about the weekend trip. You can feel that buzz.
Then upset because of problems or delays, a feeling we know well is best described as.
Frustrated,
Yeah.
and the example. I felt frustrated waiting in traffic.
Oh, yes.
The quintessential modern frustration, being stuck.
Huh. So true. Next, feeling better after stress ends. Perfect, concise way to describe being.
Relieved, example. I was relieved when the power came back on. A small thing, maybe, but a definite relief.
Definitely. And then we have feeling awkward or shy, which aligns with being.
Embarrassed, example. I was so embarrassed when I tripped. That momentary loss of cool, the self-consciousness.
Finally, the phrase feeling thankful corresponds perfectly to
Grateful, And the example, I'm grateful for all your support. Clear expression of thanks for help.
What's really good about this audio review part is how it takes these, abstract internal feelings
Hmm.
and anchors them in very relatable, everyday situations and these concrete little phrases.
Absolutely. And it also shows beautifully how these main emotion words connect to slightly longer descriptions you might use.
Right.
Like instead of just blurting out, I'm anxious, you could explain a bit more saying, I feel nervous or worried. It gives you a richer way to express yourself.
More options.
Exactly. A richer palette of language.
And it's just a really important reminder, isn't it, that learning a language isn't just about memorizing single words.
Not at all.
It's about building connections,
Yeah.
connecting a word to its meaning, yes, but also to situations and ultimately to your own feelings and experiences.
Precisely. And those simple phrases from the audio review, they can be like building blocks too.
What do you mean?
Well, you can take a phrase like a little sad and then add why. I'm feeling a little sad because my friend moved away.
Ah, right. Gives you a starting point for more detail.
Exactly. A launch pad for more detailed communication about your feelings.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive into expressing emotions in English, what would you say are the really crucial takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think fundamentally, it's recognizing and understanding this core vocabulary we've covered.
These 10 words.
Yeah, these 10 words represent a really good range of common, everyday emotional states. Knowing what each one means, how it's typically used,
Yeah,
that's the essential first step.
definitely. And we saw right from that first chat with Emma and Tom, and then with the examples, just how naturally these words pop up in conversation.
All the time. They're not just dictionary entries, they're like the language of human connection. So pay attention. Notice how native speakers use these words. You'll hear them everywhere. Movies, TV, songs, real-life conversations. Getting familiar with how they're used will boost your understanding and your ability to join in.
And that audio review section really showed how different phrases can point to the same basic feeling,
Yeah.
giving you more flexibility, more variety in how you express yourself. You don't always have to use the single word.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And it also really underlined the value of linking the feeling to a situation and experience, like the examples did.
Right.
That doesn't just help you remember the word, it helps you understand when it's appropriate to use it. If you think of a time you felt relieved, you're more likely to recall the word and how to use it correctly.
Makes sense. Okay, so as we come to our final thought for today, I'd really encourage you, listener, to actively think about how these specific words might fit into your own life. Take a moment, maybe reflect on your day, your week. Think about recent situations. It's centered around a scenario, actually. People getting personality test results, reading them out, reacting.
Oh, I can imagine that leading to some interesting discussion.
Exactly. And from those initial reactions, it's sort of spiraled out into exploring all sorts of vocabulary, positive words, negative words, the nuances.
Right. So our mission today for this deep dive is essentially to give you that vocabulary. We want to unpack these adjectives, look at what they really mean, the subtle differences.
And maybe prompt a few aha moments, right? Thinking about how these words apply to yourself or people you know.
Exactly. Building that richer vocabulary for talking about people.
A more refined way to talk about, the complexities of human nature.
Okay, so let's get into the source material then.
Yeah.
Where did this 5-hour chat actually begin?
It kicked off with that scenario we mentioned, language students getting their personality test results back.
Okay, relatable enough. And they were sharing them.
Yes, reading them aloud. And what was immediately interesting was the contrast in reactions. Huge contrast.
How so?
Well, you had one student who's just really skeptical, kind of dismissive of the whole thing.
Right. Didn't buy it.
Not at all. And then another student was the complete opposite, totally enthusiastic, like, yes, this is me.
Huh. Okay, classic reactions to personality tests. So what kind of adjectives came up for the skeptical student?
Well, initially it sounded pretty good. The test said adventurous, outgoing, easygoing.
Sounds all right so far. Positive start.
But then it added a little superstitious and occasionally naive.
And that's maybe where the skepticism kicked in?
I think so. You could sort of sense the disagreement building.
And it didn't stop there, I gather.
No. It went on. Open-minded with great ambition, back to positive.
Okay.
But then it threw in reckless and clumsy.
Oof. Okay, I can see why they might have called it stupid at that point. It's quite a mix.
It really was. And it just highlights how subjective these things are, doesn't it? How we react to these labels.
Definitely. So what about the enthusiastic student, the one who loved their results?
Well, their report was much more consistently glowing, let's say.
Oh,
Described as extroverted, well-balanced, generous, and outspoken.
and they agreed.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Apparently, they said something like, so true.
Right.
And it continued with magnanimous, eloquent, and daring.
Wow. Quite the list.
And the reaction was even stronger. This is totally me.
It really shows how much our acceptance of these words depends on whether we feel they fit our self-image, doesn't it?
Precisely. That word daring, for example. For one person, maybe negative, maybe close to reckless. For this student, clearly a positive trait they embraced.
Yeah, that difference in perception is the perfect jumping off point to actually look at the language itself.
Exactly. It sets the stage nicely.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with some of those words that lean negative, or at least potentially negative. First one was outgoing, which seems positive usually, but they defined it quite specifically.
They did. They clarified it means being comfortable talking to strangers, people you don't know well. The example was someone's brother who just strikes up conversations easily.
Right, and the key contrast they drew was with being shy.
Mm-hmm. So if you're happy chatting with new people, you're probably outgoing. If not, maybe more shy or introverted.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Then they moved on to superstitious.
Yes. This is an interesting one because, as the source pointed out, superstitions can be very cultural, very personal.
Yeah, the examples were things like walking under ladders or opening umbrellas inside common in some places.
Yeah.
But the core idea is believing certain actions bring good or bad luck,
Hmm.
right? Without much logic behind it.
Exactly. Believing in a cause and effect that isn't really there, it prompts that question, do you have any little superstitions? Many people do, even if they don't think about it much.
True. Okay, next was naive. This one feels a bit tricky, not necessarily insulting, but
Yeah, it carries implications. The explanation was that a naive person tends to just believe what they're told, sort of accepts things at face value.
like the example of believing it's raining frogs just because someone said so. It implies maybe a lack of critical thinking
No.
or world experience.
Something like that, maybe too trusting. And the speakers noted you have to be careful using it. Context and tone really matter. It can be offensive.
Right, needs careful handling. Okay, moving to something definitely more negative. Reckless.
Yeah, this paints a clearer picture. Acting without thinking about the consequences, often dangerously.
The definition was doing things without forethought.
Yeah.
Sometimes perilously. And the example was driving without a seatbelt.
A very clear example of ignoring potential harm. It's impulsive, but specifically in a way that disregards risk.
Got it. And the last one in this group was clumsy.
Clumsy. Something many of us can probably relate to at times.
Definitely. The source mentioned that classic image of clumsy high school students, always dropping things, bumping into stuff.
Yeah, prone to falling, hitting things, tripping, dropping items. That's the essence of it.
And they introduced the synonym butterfingers.
Right. Just a more informal way to say someone drops things easily.
And importantly, they clarified it's generally not seen as a really harsh insult, right? More of an observation, maybe slightly embarrassing, but not deeply offensive.
Generally, yes. Not a compliment, but not fighting words either.
Okay, so that gives us a good handle on some of those less flattering adjectives. Should we switch gears to the positive ones?
Let's do it. Starting with extroverted, which, interestingly, the source directly linked to outgoing.
Right, said it was basically a synonym.
Yeah, and they touched on the word origin, extro, meaning out, in a social sense. So someone who enjoys social situations gets energy from being around people.
And the obvious contrast is introverted.
Exactly. Intro, meaning in. Someone who might find big social events draining, prefers quieter settings, maybe needs alone time to recharge.
Okay, next positive term. Diligent.
Yes, this is definitely one you'd want people to use about your work.
Why is that? What's the core meaning?
It means being very careful, thorough, and doing things on time, paying attention to detail, seeing tasks through properly.
So it implies conscientiousness and reliability.
Precisely. The source mentioned it's highly valued by teachers, bosses, anyone assessing performance.
Makes sense. Okay, number 3 on the positive list. Magnanimous. This sounds a bit more formal.
It is, yeah, but it describes a really admirable quality.
Which,
Being generous and unselfish, doing things for the benefit of others, thinking about their well-being.
okay, so beyond just generosity.
I think so. The example given was donating a large chunk of your salary to help earthquake victims. It implies a sort of large-heartedness, real altruism, big-spirited.
That's a great way to put it. All right, next. Eloquent.
This one's specifically about communication.
How so?
Being a really good speaker, someone who uses language effectively, persuasively, makes people want to listen. It's about the impact of their words.
So not just using big words, but speaking well.
Exactly. It's the skill, the artistry in how they express themselves. Think of a great public speaker, maybe.
Got it. And the last positive one they highlighted was daring.
Yes, and this one, as they noted, can be a bit double-edged.
How do you mean?
Well, it can be positive, like taking a bold but smart risk in business that pays off. That's daring in a good way. But it can also lean towards reckless if the risks are foolish or dangerous. The example was skydiving, definitely daring. Whether it's seen as admirable or just risky depends on perspective.
Right, context is key again. So that's quite a spectrum of words we've covered, positive and negative. What did the source say about actually using this vocabulary?
Well, they brought it back to practical situations like job interviews.
Ah, the classic describe yourself in 3 adjectives question.
Exactly. Knowing these words and their nuances makes answering that a lot easier. Or even discussing weaknesses, another common interview question.
Though maybe you wouldn't choose superstitious and naive for that one.
Probably not advisable, no. But understanding words like, say, reckless versus maybe prone to taking calculated risks could be useful.
Fair point. And they mentioned some homework.
Yeah, apparently in the original 5-hour chat, the participants were asked to find an adjective to describe themselves and think about it, which is actually a pretty good exercise for anyone listening.
Definitely. A bit of self-reflection. Which of these words fit you? What words might others use?
It's useful. And then, kind of related, the conversation shifted to describing personalities we might find, well, difficult. Irritating, even.
Okay, how do they approach that?
They used the example of the type A personality.
Ah, type A. We've all heard that one. How do they define it?
As someone who is maybe too extroverted, too hardworking, but in a specific way, very serious, often anxious, always needing to be busy, controlling.
Doesn't sound very relaxing to be around.
No. Often not very easygoing, maybe not great listeners, tend to insist on their own way.
Right, so driven, yes, but potentially difficult in teams or relationships because of that intensity and lack of flexibility.
That's the picture they painted. It shows how even positive traits, like being hardworking, can become problematic if they're extreme or unbalanced.
That idea of balance seems important. Finally, the source mentioned an audio review section. What was the takeaway there?
It seemed to be about reinforcing the vocabulary. They didn't have the full audio for us, but the summary mentioned providing definitions and example sentences.
Which is crucial for really learning new words, isn't it? Seeing them in context.
Absolutely. They apparently highlighted some interesting contrasts, like the difference between naive and ignorant, or reckless versus just careless. Subtle but important distinctions.
And they revisited words like open-minded, superstitious, clumsy, eloquent, extrovert.
Giving short definitions and showing how they're used in sentences. It really drives home that you need more than just the dictionary definition. You need to see how the word lives and breathes in the language.
Couldn't agree more. Understanding the usage, the connotation, which is, the workhorse for talking about habits.
The go-to tense.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's not just about ticking off grammar rules. It's more about building that solid foundation for actual communication, starting with the things we all do day in, day out.
Absolutely. And it's easy to think, oh, daily routines, that's simple stuff. But honestly, this is where it can get quite fascinating.
How so?
Well, even something seemingly mundane, like what someone does between waking up and hitting the pillow, it can offer a surprisingly deep peek into their world.
Interesting point.
Think about it. Cultural differences in how people structure mornings, maybe the importance placed on different meals, or even just how someone unwinds in the evening. It's all kind of hinted at in their routine.
Yeah, you can see priorities reflected there.
Exactly. Plus, getting these basics down pat, it's like having the cheat codes for unlocking more complex conversations later. So, ready to explore this?
Definitely. The material kicks off with a really relatable scenario. It's just a quick chat between two people, Liam and Maya, talking about their typical days.
Okay.
And it's brilliant because it immediately puts all this vocabulary and grammar stuff into a context that feels, natural, not like a textbook exercise.
Right. Context is everything. Okay, so Liam starts it off, asks a pretty universal question. Hey, what's your daily routine like? And Maya gives a nice summary. What jumps out first from her answer?
Well, she starts with, well, I usually wake up at 7, take a quick shower, and have breakfast. Boom. Right there, in one sentence, 3 core daily activities.
Mm-hmm.
And notice that little word, usually, it tells us something, doesn't it, about the regularity. It's a habit, but maybe not like an absolute 100% thing.
Yeah, usually implies some wiggle room. I liked how she added quick to shower, too. It's such a small detail, but paints a clearer picture.
It does.
It's not a long, relaxing soak. It's efficient, part of getting ready. The kind of word you'd actually use.
Right.
Then Liam asks if she works from home, which, let's be honest, is a huge part of many routines now.
Oh, absolutely. A very relevant question these days.
And she says, yes, she does.
Exactly. So that question from Liam, it immediately grounds the conversation in, well, contemporary life. And Maya's answer sets the stage for the next chunk of her routine, the work part.
Okay, and what does her workday look like, based on what she says?
She explains, I start work at 9. I take a lunch break around 1 p.m., then finish around 5:30.
Okay.
It's such a common rhythm, isn't it? We see those key verbs. Start work, take a break, finish work, all tied to specific times.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how she uses at for the start time at 9, but around for lunch and finishing.
Yeah, around 1 p.m. and around 5:30. That around feels very real life, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Suggests a bit more flexibility there. Things don't always happen precisely on the dot.
Right. Lunch might shift 10 minutes depending on a meeting or whatever. So then Liam pivots to her evening. What does she typically do after work?
Maya says, I sometimes go for a walk or watch a movie. I try to go to bed by 10:30.
Okay, so a mix of activities there.
Again, we get those verbs, go for a walk, watch a movie, go to bed, and those really useful adverbs, sometimes, and try to.
Right. Sometimes suggests it's not every night.
Exactly, it's occasional. While try to indicates more of an intention, a goal for her bedtime. It implies it might not always happen, but she aims for it.
It's fascinating how much info is packed into just, a few sentences.
It really is.
It gives you a solid snapshot of her typical weekday. So, the source material then zooms in on some of those key action words, the common routine verbs. Let's maybe walk through a few. First one is wake up.
Okay, wake up. Pretty straightforward, right? It's the moment you stop sleeping. The example sentence is, I wake up at 7 a.m.
Clear enough.
Notice how it pairs with that specific time using at. It's fundamental for starting the day's description and, culturally.
Oh.
Well, in some cultures, the time someone wakes up might even carry certain meanings. Like waking up super early might signal diligence or fit certain professions.
That's a really interesting layer. You don't usually think about that with such a basic verb. Okay, next, take a shower. Example. She takes a shower every morning. What should we notice here?
2 things maybe. First, the verb phrase, take a shower. That's the most common way to say it in English. You might hear have a shower sometimes, especially in, say, British English. But take chick is generally more widespread.
Got it, take a shower.
Second, notice the S on takes, because the subject is she. This is that little grammar point we'll circle back to, but it's crucial for the simple present. And adding every morning just really emphasizes the routineness of it.
Right, that repetition. Okay, then have breakfast. Example. He has breakfast at 8. Notable points.
Again, that third person singular has, not have, because it's he, and have breakfast is the standard phrase for eating that first meal.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about breakfast, though, is just how much it varies globally. What one person considers a normal breakfast can be totally different elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely. A coffee and croissant versus, rice and fish.
Yeah.
Breakfast covers a lot.
Exactly. So even saying I have breakfast can spark a whole conversation about cultural food habits.
True. Okay, moving into the workday. Start work and finish work. Examples. I start work at 9. I finish work at 5. Pretty essential phrases.
Totally essential for anyone with a job.
Yeah.
The structure is simple. The verb phrase, then the time, usually with at. It's clear, direct communication about your schedule. And the times themselves, of course, vary hugely.
Naturally. Okay, we also have take a break. Example. I take a break around noon. What's the significance here?
Well, this phrase acknowledges that our days, especially work days, aren't just solid blocks of activity. Take a break is super common, emphasizes pausing, resting.
Yeah, breaking things up.
And that around noon, again, gives that little bit of timing flexibility. Plus, break culture varies a lot too, right? How long, how often?
That's such a good point. Short coffee breaks versus a proper long lunch hour. Okay, then evening activities, go for a walk. Example, I go for a walk in the evening.
Yeah, go for a walk is a great example of like a phrasal verb construction. Go plus for a walk means something specific, a leisurely stroll usually.
Right? Not just go somewhere.
Exactly. And adding in the evening places it in the daily timeline, often suggesting it's for unwinding.
Makes sense. Following that, watch a movie. Example, we watch movies on weekends. What's highlighted here?
This one's interesting because the example shifts the time frame. It's not daily, it's on weekends. Shows how routines can change.
Good catch. Weekday versus weekend rhythm.
Right. And watch a movie is obviously common for leisure. Specifying on weekends tells you when this particular activity usually happens for we.
And finally, the last one listed is go to bed. Example, I go to bed at 10. Another key part of the cycle.
Yep, another very common phrasal verb simply means heading off to sleep. The time at 10 specifies when. And bedtimes, like wake-up times, can also reflect cultural norms or individual priorities about evenings.
So wow, just looking at these common verbs gives us the basic words and little hints about daily structure and maybe even culture. Okay, next up, the source digs into time expressions for daily routines. These are the anchors, right?
Precisely. They place the actions. First, in the morning. Example, I brush my teeth in the morning. Broad time frame, wake up till noonish. Covered all those early activities.
Okay. Then at noon or around 1 p.m., example, I eat lunch around 1. More specific, middle of the day, usually lunchtime. And that or around, again, for flexibility.
Exactly. After that, in the afternoon. Example, I take a break in the afternoon. This covers, well, noon until evening. Less precise than noon, but very common.
Got it. And then in the evening, example, I relax in the evening, typically post-work, pre-bed, leisure time, winding down.
And finally, at night, as in I go to bed at night. This usually refers to the period when people sleep or activities right before sleep.
These seem so basic, but you really need them to make sense of a routine description. The source also gives us some common time-related phrases. These add more nuance, right?
Yes. These are the adverbs of frequency. They tell us how often. First is usually, like in I usually wake up at 7. Means it's typical, the common pattern, but it allows for exceptions.
Okay. Then sometimes.
So,
Example, I sometimes go to the gym. Tells us it happens, but, occasionally, not regularly.
right. Next is always. Example, I always drink coffee. This implies it's constant, a never-missed habit.
Stronger word, the opposite being never, as in I never skip breakfast. Equally strong, but in the negative. Consistent absence of the action.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And lastly, there's try to, like in I try to sleep early. This is interesting because it expresses intention, effort.
Ah, so it's a desired habit, not necessarily a guaranteed one.
Exactly. It suggests you aim for it even if you don't always manage it.
These adverbs, they really add layers, don't they? Saying I read versus I usually read before bed gives so much more texture to the routine.
Absolutely. They let us convey that regularity or lack thereof, which is essential for describing habits meaningfully. Now, holding all this together, the vocabulary, the time stuff, is the grammar, the simple present tense.
Ah, yes, the grammatical backbone for habits and routines. Can you give us the quick rundown, the basic structure?
Sure. For I, you, we, and they, it's pretty straightforward. You just use the base form of the verb. No changes.
Okay.
So I wake up early, you take a shower, we have breakfast, they start work. Simple.
So no S on the end for those ones, but things change for he and she. Yeah.
That's the key difference.
Yeah.
For the third person singular, so he, she, and it, we usually add an S to the end of the base verb.
Right.
So it's not he wake up, it's he wakes up or she wakes up.
And the source gives some examples to really nail this down. What were they?
See, okay. He starts work at 9. See the S on starts because it's he.
Got it.
Then they go to the gym after work. Base form go because the subject is they.
Makes sense.
Next, she eats lunch at 1. That S on eats because it's she.
Okay.
And finally, I get home by 6. Base form get because the subject is I.
That little S, it can be tricky for learners, but it's such a crucial marker for this tense with he, she, it.
It really is. And as we've kind of touched on, the source also points out that to sound more natural, we often combine these simple present sentences with those time phrases and frequency adverbs we just talked about.
Exactly. Like the examples they gave. I usually wake up at 7, and she always has dinner at 8. You're layering the information.
Precisely. Who does it? How often? The action itself, with the S if needed, and when, putting all the pieces together for a clear, natural description.
Okay. Now, to really check our understanding, the source included a quick quiz. Fill in the blanks, focused on those verb forms. Let's run through them quickly just to reinforce things.
Good idea.
Number 1, I up at 7 a.m. The answer is wake. Why wake, not wakes?
Because the subject is I. First person singular takes the base form. No S.
Got it. Number 2, she a shower before work. Correct answer, takes. Why the S?
Subject is she, third person singular. So the verb take needs that S ending. Becomes takes.
Makes perfect sense. Number 3, we lunch around 1. Answer is have. No S here.
That's right. Subject is we, plural. So we use the base form have.
Okay. Number 4, they for a walk every evening. Answer, go. Again, base form, the reason.
Subject they, also plural. So just the base form go.
And number 5, he to bed at 11. Answer is goes. Now, this has an ES ending, not just S. What's the deal there?
Good point. Yes. For verbs ending in certain sounds, like the O sound in go, or it sounds like S,
Yeah.
we usually add ES for the third person singular, makes it easier to pronounce. So go becomes goes.
Gotcha. So that little quiz really hammers home the importance of getting those verb endings right for the simple present, especially for routines.
Exactly. It's a practical check on applying the grammar to the vocabulary.
All right, so let's try and tie this all together. For you listening, what are the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive into talking about daily routines in English?
Well, I think the most important thing is that you now have a solid toolkit. You've got a bunch of common verbs: wake up, have breakfast, finish work, go to bed, all those.
The core actions.
Right. You also know how to use time expressions in the morning, at night, around noon, to place these actions during the day.
The anchors.
And crucially, you understand the basics of the simple present tense, especially that little S you need for he and she when talking about habits, plus how adverbs like usually and sometimes add that extra layer of detail.
Exactly. So you should feel more equipped now, not just to understand when someone else describes their day, but also to, confidently share your own routine. And like we said earlier, being able to talk about these everyday things, it's such a fundamental communication skill. It's the bedrock for more complex chats later.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic launch pad for more learning. Once you're comfortable with the present, with daily habits, you can start exploring past routines, future plans, things you do less often. Really opens things up.
So as you're listening, maybe take a moment. Think about your own daily routine. How would you describe it using some of these verbs, these time expressions? Maybe, I don't know, mentally try putting a few sentences together.
How so?
Well, you had one student who's just really skeptical, kind of dismissive of the whole thing.
Right. Didn't buy it.
Not at all. And then another student was the complete opposite, totally enthusiastic, like, yes, this is me.
Huh. Okay, classic reactions to personality tests. So what kind of adjectives came up for the skeptical student?
Well, initially it sounded pretty good. The test said adventurous, outgoing, easygoing.
Sounds all right so far.
Mm.
Positive start.
But then it added a little superstitious and occasionally naive.
And that's maybe where the skepticism kicked in?
I think so. You could sort of sense the disagreement building.
And it didn't stop there, I gather.
No. It went on. Open-minded with great ambition, back to positive.
Okay.
But then it threw in reckless and clumsy.
Oof. Okay, I can see why they might have called it stupid at that point. It's quite a mix.
It really was. And it just highlights how subjective these things are, doesn't it? How we react to these labels.
Definitely. So what about the enthusiastic student, the one who loved their results?
Well, their report was much more consistently glowing, let's say.
Oh.
Described as extroverted, well-balanced, generous, and outspoken.
And they agreed.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
Apparently they said something like, so true.
Right.
And it continued with magnanimous, eloquent, and daring.
Wow. Quite the list.
And the reaction was even stronger. This is totally me.
It really shows how much our acceptance of these words depends on whether we feel they fit our self-image, doesn't it?
Precisely. That word daring, for example. For one person, maybe negative, maybe close to reckless. For this student, clearly a positive trait they embraced.
Yeah, that difference in perception is the perfect jumping off point to actually look at the language itself.
Exactly. It sets the stage nicely.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's start with some of those words that lean negative, or at least potentially negative. First one was outgoing, which seems positive usually, but they defined it quite specifically.
They did. They clarified it means being comfortable talking to strangers, people you don't know well. The example was someone's brother who just strikes up conversations easily.
Right, and the key contrast they drew was with being shy.
So if you're happy chatting with new people, you're probably outgoing. If not, maybe more shy or introverted.
Makes sense.
Uh,
Then they moved on to superstitious.
Ah, yes. This is an interesting one because, as the source pointed out, superstitions can be very cultural, very personal.
Yeah, the examples were things like walking under ladders or opening umbrellas inside common in some places.
Yeah.
But the core idea is believing certain actions bring good or bad luck,
Hmm.
right? Without much logic behind it.
Exactly. Believing in a cause and effect that isn't really there, it prompts that question, do you have any little superstitions? Many people do, even if they don't think about it much.
True. Okay, next was naive. This one feels a bit tricky. Not necessarily insulting, but
Yeah, it carries implications. The explanation was that a naive person tends to just believe what they're told, sort of accepts things at face value.
like the example of believing it's raining frogs just because someone said so. It implies maybe a lack of critical thinking
No.
or world experience.
Something like that, maybe too trusting. And the speakers noted you have to be careful using it. Context and tone really matter. It can be offensive.
Right. Needs careful handling. Okay, moving to something definitely more negative. Reckless.
Yeah, this paints a clearer picture. Acting without thinking about the consequences, often dangerously.
The definition was doing things without forethought,
Yeah.
sometimes perilously. And the example was driving without a seatbelt.
A very clear example of ignoring potential harm. It's impulsive, but specifically in a way that disregards risk.
Got it. And the last one in this group was clumsy.
Ah, clumsy. Something many of us can probably relate to at times.
Definitely. The source mentioned that classic image of clumsy high school students, always dropping things, bumping into stuff.
Yeah, prone to falling, hitting things, tripping, dropping items. That's the essence of it.
And they introduced the synonym butterfingers.
Right. Just a more informal way to say someone drops things easily.
And importantly, they clarified it's generally not seen as a really harsh insult, right? More of an observation, maybe slightly embarrassing, but not deeply offensive.
Generally, yes. Not a compliment, but not fighting words either.
Okay, so that gives us a good handle on some of those less flattering adjectives. Should we switch gears to the positive ones?
Let's do it. Starting with extroverted, which, interestingly, the source directly linked to outgoing.
Right, said it was basically a synonym.
Yeah, and they touched on the word origin, extro, meaning out, in a social sense. So someone who enjoys social situations gets energy from being around people.
And the obvious contrast is introverted.
Exactly. Intro, meaning in. Someone who might find big social events draining, prefers quieter settings, maybe needs alone time to recharge.
Okay, next positive term. Diligent.
Yes, this is definitely one you'd want people to use about your work.
Why is that? What's the core meaning?
It means being very careful, thorough, and doing things on time, paying attention to detail, seeing tasks through properly.
So it implies conscientiousness and reliability.
Precisely. The source mentioned it's highly valued by teachers, bosses, anyone assessing performance.
Makes sense. Okay, number 3 on the positive list. Magnanimous. This sounds a bit more formal.
It is, yeah, but it describes a really admirable quality.
Which,
Being generous and unselfish, doing things for the benefit of others, thinking about their well-being.
okay, so beyond just generosity.
I think so. The example given was donating a large chunk of your salary to help earthquake victims. It implies a sort of large-heartedness, real altruism, big-spirited.
That's a great way to put it. All right, next. Eloquent.
This one's specifically about communication.
How so?
Being a really good speaker, someone who uses language effectively, persuasively, makes people want to listen. It's about the impact of their words.
So not just using big words, but speaking well.
Exactly. It's the skill, the artistry in how they express themselves. Think of a great public speaker, maybe.
Got it. And the last positive one they highlighted was daring.
Yes, and this one, as they noted, can be a bit double-edged.
How do you mean?
Well, it can be positive, like taking a bold but smart risk in business that pays off. That's daring in a good way. But it can also lean towards reckless if the risks are foolish or dangerous. The example was skydiving, definitely daring. Whether it's seen as admirable or just risky depends on perspective.
Right, context is key again. So that's quite a spectrum of words we've covered, positive and negative. What did the source say about actually using this vocabulary?
Well, they brought it back to practical situations like job interviews.
The classic describe yourself in 3 adjectives question.
Exactly. Knowing these words and their nuances makes answering that a lot easier. Or even discussing weaknesses, another common interview question.
Though maybe you wouldn't choose superstitious and naive for that one.
Probably not advisable, no. But understanding words like, say, reckless versus maybe prone to taking calculated risks could be useful.
Fair point. And they mentioned some homework.
Yeah, apparently in the original 5-hour chat, the participants were asked to find an adjective to describe themselves and think about it, which is actually a pretty good exercise for anyone listening.
Definitely. A bit of self-reflection. Which of these words fit you? What words might others use?
It's useful. And then, kind of related, the conversation shifted to describing personalities we might find, well, difficult, irritating even.
Okay, how do they approach that?
They used the example of the type A personality.
Ah, type A. We've all heard that one. How do they define it?
As someone who is maybe too extroverted, too hardworking, but in a specific way, very serious, often anxious, always needing to be busy, controlling.
Doesn't sound very relaxing to be around.
No. Often not very easygoing, maybe not great listeners, tend to insist on their own way.
Right, so driven, yes, but potentially difficult in teams or relationships because of that intensity and lack of flexibility.
That's the picture they painted. It shows how even positive traits, like being hardworking, can become problematic if they're extreme or unbalanced.
That idea of balance seems important. Finally, the source mentioned an audio review section. What was the takeaway there?
It seemed to be about reinforcing the vocabulary. They didn't have the full audio for us, but the summary mentioned providing definitions and example sentences.
Which is crucial for really learning new words, isn't it? Seeing them in context.
Absolutely. They apparently highlighted some interesting contrasts, like the difference between naive and ignorant, or reckless versus just careless. Subtle but important distinctions.
And they revisited words like open-minded, superstitious, clumsy, eloquent, extrovert.
Giving short definitions and showing how they're used in sentences. It really drives home that you need more than just the dictionary definition. You need to see how the word lives and breathes in the language.
Couldn't exactly. But it underlines why having these words handy is so important. So maybe let's start with friendly. What does that actually mean?
Okay, friendly. The source defines it as being kind, warm, easy to talk to.
Right, approachable.
Yeah, it's those people who just, make you feel comfortable right away. They smile, ask about your day. They just create that welcoming vibe.
Precisely. It's about that initial openness. Think about their example. Our neighbors are really friendly, even brought us cookies.
Ha! Yeah, classic friendly move.
That small gesture, it says a lot about their warmth. It makes you think, doesn't it, how those first few interactions are so shaped by someone's friendliness.
Definitely leaves a positive first impression. Builds rapport quickly.
Yeah. What kind of impression do those really friendly people leave generally?
Well, a lasting good one, I'd say. It just breaks down walls instantly. Okay, so next. Confident.
Yeah.
This is one we often admire, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what are the core bits of, true confidence?
Well, according to the resource, it really starts with believing in yourself, in your abilities.
Okay.
And it shows up in how someone carries themselves. They speak clearly, stand tall. They seem to trust their own judgment. It's like an inner certainty that kind of radiates out.
And the source makes a really, really crucial point here, doesn't it?
About arrogance.
Yeah, the difference between confidence and arrogance. People mix them up all the time.
Oh, constantly. But they're worlds apart, really.
Yeah.
Confidence comes from that solid self-belief. Arrogance often seems to come from a need to feel superior.
Right.
You see it in how they talk, maybe? A confident person can state their case firmly, without putting others down. An arrogant person might be more dismissive or boastful.
That's a good distinction. It raises an interesting question, though. How do you actually spot true confidence versus arrogance in, real life? What are the signs?
That's a tough one sometimes. I think maybe it boils down to how they treat other people.
Yeah.
Like you said, a genuinely confident person doesn't need to diminish others to feel good. They're secure already.
Okay, that makes sense. So, friendly, confident. Next up is reliable. In a world where, let's be honest, things can be a bit flaky, what's real reliability?
Reliability.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's about being dependable. Simple as that.
Okay.
Knowing that if someone says they'll do something, you can actually count on them, they follow through.
Right.
The example they use is, she's the most reliable person on the team. She never misses a deadline. Very work-focused.
True, but it goes way beyond work, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Think about personal relationships. Reliability is showing up when you say you will, being there when things get tough, keeping promises. It's like the bedrock of trust.
It really is. What kind of impact does just having reliable people around you have on your own, well-being?
Oh, huge. It
Well,
creates a
yeah.
sense of security, doesn't it? Reduces stress.
Yeah, definitely.
When you know you can depend on someone, you're not constantly worrying about, picking up the slack or dealing with fallout from broken promises. It just fosters a much more stable, trusting environment. Work project, family crisis, whatever.
Stable and trusting. Good words. Okay, now, patient. What does it mean to really embody patience?
Patience.
Mm.
It's about keeping your cool, staying calm, even when things are slow or frustrating or just difficult.
Right. Things aren't going your way.
Exactly. Our source points to professions like teachers, parents, customer service reps,
Yeah, you need tons of patience there.
for sure. But it's valuable everywhere, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Think about learning something new or tackling a complex problem, dealing with unexpected travel delays.
Ugh, yes.
A patient person can kind of push through those things without getting super agitated or just giving up.
So when has being patient really made a difference for you? Any situations come to mind?
Hmm. Definitely when learning new software or something technical, that initial hurdle,
Oh, I feel that.
yeah, it can be overwhelming. Patience lets you stick with it, see progress eventually. And it's vital in arguments too, right? Staying calm, actually listening.
True. Very true. Okay, last one for this first group. Empathetic. This feels really important for building real connections.
It absolutely is. Empathy is that ability to um, understand and even share the feelings of someone else.
Share them.
Yeah, the source says it's like feeling with someone when they're sad, really connecting to their emotional state and showing you care, showing support. It's deeper than just saying, oh, that's too bad.
It's understanding.
Exactly, understanding and caring.
And their example, he's very empathetic. He always knows when something's wrong. That really gets at that intuitive side, being tuned in.
Spotting the emotional cues.
So how does empathy make relationships stronger, personally, professionally?
Well, it builds that feeling of being understood, being valued.
Hmm.
When someone feels you genuinely get where they're coming from, it builds massive trust, strengthens the bond. And at work, empathetic leaders often create, more supportive, understanding teams, better collaboration, better morale.
Yeah, I can see that. So this first batch, friendly, confident, reliable, patient, empathetic, they really feel like the foundations, don't they?
Foundations of positive interaction, absolutely.
Okay, great. Let's move into the second set of these really valuable adjectives. First one,
Right?
generous. What takes it beyond just, giving stuff?
Right. Generosity is about sharing what you have. And that could be time, money, sure, but also kindness, attention, support.
Okay.
And crucially, doing it without expecting something back.
Yeah.
It's that selfless giving.
And the example they gave was pretty strong. She's so generous, she donated her bonus to charity.
Yeah, that nails it. Giving without strings attached.
It makes you think how generosity can create this, ripple effect. Helps the person getting it, but maybe the whole community, too.
Definitely. What do you think drives really generous people? Is it just one thing?
Probably not. Maybe a real desire to help, make things better. Could be gratitude, maybe just understanding what others are going through.
Yeah, it feels less about the act itself and more about the why, the positive intention.
Hmm.
Okay, next. Hardworking,
Mm-hmm.
often linked straight to success, right?
For sure.
But what actually defines someone as hardworking? Is it just putting in long hours?
I don't think so. Not just that. It's
Yeah.
more about putting in consistent effort, being diligent, not giving up easily, that focused, persistent approach.
Right. Consistent and focused.
The source has that relatable example, needing a hardworking friend for a group project.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah.
On both sides, maybe.
Huh. Probably. It makes you appreciate that it's not just time spent, but the dedication, the quality of the effort.
So what kind of mindset do you need to be truly hardworking?
I think discipline, definitely. A strong work ethic, commitment to seeing things through, pushing past the tough spots.
Sticking with it. Got it. Okay, next. Humble. Now, this is interesting. In a world that often seems to reward, shouting about your achievements,
Yeah.
why is humility still seen as so admirable?
That's a good question. A humble person is modest, right?
Hmm.
They could be incredibly talented, super successful, but they don't boast. They don't draw constant attention to it.
Right. The example was, even though he won the award, he stayed humble. It suggests this kind of quiet confidence. Doesn't need the applause.
There's a real strength in that, isn't there? It feels more genuine. People often respond better to someone who's achieved a lot but doesn't, rub it in your face.
Why do you think humility often gets more respect in the long run?
Maybe because it suggests they're self-aware. focused on more than just themselves. It implies their value isn't just tied to their trophies.
Yeah, and it makes them more approachable, more relatable, maybe.
Definitely. Okay, moving to one that's just fundamental. For trust, for ethics, honest.
Ah, yes, honesty. Telling the truth, being genuine.
Keeping it real, as the
Yeah.
source says, integrity. They even mention that old saying, honesty is the best policy. Simple AVM, massive impact.
It truly is. Honesty is the absolute bedrock of trust.
Yeah.
Personal life, work life, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Without it, communication just crumbles. Confidence disappears. It's the foundation for ethical behavior, for a good reputation.
What happens when honesty is missing? Like on a bigger scale in a relationship or even society?
Oh, it can lead to a total breakdown of trust,
Yeah.
honestly. Resentment, even like systemic failures. If dishonesty becomes the norm, it's the glue.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, last one in this set. Supportive. What does being supportive actually look like?
It's a supportive person. They're the ones who encourage you, help you through tough times. They believe in you.
They're in your corner.
Exactly. Offering encouragement, understanding, maybe practical help when you need it. The example was, my sister is so supportive, she helped me through everything. That really captures that unwavering belief, that willingness to help.
Man, those supportive relationships are just vital, aren't they? For growing, for bouncing back,
Absolutely.
knowing someone believes in you, especially when you're doubting yourself.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
Totally. So what are some good ways people can actually show support? Is it always the same thing?
Probably not. Could be just listening, really listening, offering validation. Sometimes it's practical help, like bringing over dinner, sometimes just being there.
Yeah, it's about figuring out what that specific person needs in that moment and offering it genuinely.
Right. So, wow, that's a really solid set of 10 powerful words now. Friendly, confident, reliable, patient, empathetic.
Generous, hardworking,
Yeah.
humble, honest, and supportive. A great toolkit.
And like our source points out, these aren't just, words floating around. They have real value in how we navigate the world, especially professionally and socially.
It's exactly right. Think about using these words consciously. When you give a compliment, maybe,
Yeah.
praising a colleague for being reliable, or telling a friend how empathetic they are, or even thinking about them for, say, cover letters or your LinkedIn profile. Using them authentically, of course.
Right. Authentically.
But these words can genuinely shift how others see you and how they see the people you're talking about.
It really shows the power of being intentional with language. Choosing these specific positive words helps us communicate better, build stronger connections.
Definitely.
Now, our source also mentioned an audio review section. You said it reinforces these ideas.
It does. It's quite clever, actually. It pairs a really short definition with the word and then gives a clear example sentence. It's a great way to kind of lock it in your mind, see it used practically.
Like a quick mental recap.
Exactly. Helps embed the words in their meanings. We could maybe revisit a few examples just to make it concrete.
Yeah, good idea. What was the one for friendly?
Okay, friendly. Definition. Kind and easy to talk to. Example. She's so friendly, everyone loves her. Simple, clear, impactful.
Absolutely. And confident.
Definition. Believes in themselves. Example. He's confident when speaking in meetings.
Yeah.
Instantly paints a picture, right? Self-assurance in a work context.
Totally. What about reliable? That's a key one.
Yep. Defined as can be trusted. And the sentence, she's reliable, she never cancels plans. So relatable. Everyday dependability.
Yeah, we all know someone like that.
Yeah.
I wish we did.
What about empathetic? How did the audio review capture that?
Definition. Understands others' feelings. Example. Quizzes, challenges, just to give people an idea of how to really make these phrases stick.
Fantastic. Sounds like a comprehensive plan. More than comprehensive, maybe.
It is. And it's fascinating because ordering food, it seems so mundane, doesn't it? But it's wrapped up in all these social cues, these expectations.
That's true. It's not just about getting fed.
Not at all. It's communication. Understanding the nuances helps you navigate that communication more effectively, more positively. We're really going to dissect the layers here today.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's grab a virtual seat at the table. The dialogue, where's it set?
Okay, imagine this. Olive Garden. Pretty familiar spot for many.
Yep, got it.
And we've got two customers, Emma and Liam, and, of course, a waiter.
Okay, so the interaction starts how?
It kicks off with the greeting. Waiter comes up, friendly, says, "Hi, welcome to Olive Garden. How many people?"
Right. Straightforward enough, that first question. How many people?
Yeah, it's standard procedure, isn't it? They need to know right away what size table you need. It's efficient, sets the whole thing in motion.
Makes sense. And Emma's reply?
Simple, polite. Just two, please.
Okay, just two, please. That word just, it's not strictly needed, but it feels natural, doesn't it?
It does. It softens it slightly, maybe.
Yeah.
Clarifies. And the please, we'll probably keep coming back to that.
Oh, for sure. Politeness counts.
Absolutely. Even that tiny word, please, it sets a courteous tone right from the start. Shows a bit of respect, which, well, it usually makes things go smoother.
Definitely. Okay, so they've established it's two people. What's next?
The waiter guides them. Right this way. Here are your menus. Practical stuff first.
Get the tools in hand.
Exactly. Then the offer. Can I get you started with something to drink?
The classic drink offer. Happens pretty quick, usually.
It does. It's efficient for them, gets the ball rolling, and gives you something to sip on while you look over the food options.
That phrasing, can I get you started? It feels quite, invitational, not pushy.
Right. It's helpful. It frames it as the beginning of the service, the start of the experience, allows you to settle in. What do you think about that particular way of asking?
I like the get you started part. It acknowledges, yeah, this is just the first step. We're easing into the meal. And Emma's response is quick.
What does she say?
Yes, I'll have a lemonade. And he'll have an iced tea. Bang, bang. Clear orders.
Okay, so I'll have. That's a key one. It's short for I will have,
Right.
right?
Super common, very natural way to state your choice.
And she also orders for Liam. And he'll have an iced tea. Is that generally okay?
I think so, yeah. Especially if you know the person well, know what they want, it just speeds things up, keeps it flowing.
Right. Saves the waiter asking again.
Yeah.
Streamlines it. Okay, so drinks are sorted. What happens then?
Waiter heads off, presumably comes back fairly quickly and checks in. Got it. Are you ready to order?
Another classic line. You hear that all the time.
You do. It's the prompt. Time to decide on the food, or ask for more time.
And it's polite, right? It gives you that control. You can say yes or could we have another minute? Doesn't feel rushed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how does Emma respond? Is she ready?
She is. She says, yes, I'd like the grilled chicken with rice.
Okay, hold on. This is one you highlighted earlier. I'd like.
Yes, this is a really important one. The contraction of I would like.
Why is that one so key compared to, say, I want?
Well, want isn't wrong. People will understand you, but I would like or I'd like. It's just generally considered more polite in like a service situation, a restaurant setting.
More formal, maybe.
A little more formal, yes, but mostly just softer,
Yeah.
less demanding. Think about why do you reckon that little word would make such a difference?
Good question. Maybe it feels more like a request than a command. I want sounds a bit like give me this now, whereas I would like is more like if possible, this is my preference. It shows consideration for the person serving you.
That's a great way to put it. It acknowledges their role in providing the service. It's a subtle social lubricant, really.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So Emma uses I'd like. What about Liam?
Liam follows up with, and I'll have the pasta with tomato sauce, please.
So he uses I'll have, which we said was also fine.
Totally fine. Very common. Perfectly polite. And notice he adds the please at the end.
Right, reinforcing that politeness again. Even in a place like Olive Garden, which isn't super formal, it still counts.
Absolutely. It just makes the whole interaction more pleasant for everyone. So, yeah, just in that short little exchange, we've got greetings, questions about numbers, drink orders, food orders, several really core phrases.
It's packed, actually, when you break it down like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's really zoom in on some of that vocabulary. The specific phrases, our source material highlighted. First one, how many people?
Yep. As we said, standard opening question, purely about logistics, getting you the right table.
Nothing really hidden there. The
Boom.
expected answer is just the number.
Pretty much. Number, maybe followed by people, or like Emma did, adding a please. Very straightforward.
Got it. Which leads nicely to her answer. Just two, please.
Simple, clear, polite. Ticks all the boxes.
That just, again, it's optional but common.
Yeah, very common. Feels natural in conversation. And again, the please. Can't stress that enough for setting a good tone.
Okay. Then we had the drink offer. Can I get you started with something to drink?
Right. Usually comes after you've sat down, maybe had a quick glance at the menu. It's about starting the service process.
Getting things moving.
Exactly. And it's helpful, right? They bring you drinks while you focus on the food choices, gives them a chance to maybe gauge what you like too.
True. And the response phrase we focused on was, I'll have...
Your go-to for stating your order.
Ah,
I'll have the lemonade, I'll have the chicken, I'll have the soup. Works for pretty much anything.
concise, clear, polite enough, not demanding.
Precisely. It's like the verbal equivalent of pointing nicely at the menu item you want.
Okay. Then the check-in. Are you ready to order?
The waiters signal that they're ready for your food choices, if you are.
Right. It's checking your timing, giving you the option.
Very courteous. Avoids making you feel pressured if you're still deciding between, I don't know, the pasta and the fish.
Definitely been there. Okay, and then back to I'd like.
Yes. The slightly more formal, definitely more polite option for ordering. Our source really emphasizes this one.
So, while I'll have is good.
Perfectly good, absolutely common.
Bunner just adds that extra touch of polish, especially maybe in a fancier place or if you just want to be extra courteous.
Exactly that. It elevates the politeness just a notch. Can't hurt, right?
Right. And the last one from the dialogue specifically was, he'll have ordering for someone else.
Yeah, very useful in certain situations if you're with kids or someone shy or you've discussed it beforehand. Keeps things efficient.
Waiters must be used to that.
Oh, totally. Helps avoid confusion, ensures accuracy. Especially handy in bigger groups, probably.
Okay, so that dialogue and its key phrases give us a really solid base. But dining out involves more than just that initial order, obviously.
Absolutely. There's the whole arc of the experience. And thankfully, our sources provide a wider range of phrases for different points in that arc.
Right, categorized, which is helpful. So let's dig into those now. Extend our linguistic menu.
Sounds good. Let's start at the beginning. When you arrive, what's the absolute classic?
Has to be. Table for two, please. Or three or four, whatever.
The essential entry phrase. Direct, polite. Tells them exactly what you need first. Universally understood.
Can't go wrong with that one. What else for arrival?
Hmm.
Maybe if you have a seating preference.
Good point. The source suggests, can we sit by the window?
Can we? That phrasing seems important again, making it a request.
Exactly. It's polite. It acknowledges that maybe all the window tables are taken, much better than, say, demanding we want the window table. Shows flexibility.
Okay. And what if you've planned ahead, made a booking?
Then you use, we have a reservation under name. So in our dialogues case, maybe it wasn't used, but it's super useful generally. We have a reservation under Smith or whatever your name is.
All right, just slot your name in. That must save time at the host stand, especially if it's busy.
Definitely. Helps them find your booking quickly, gets you seated faster. Smooth start.
Okay, so that covers arrival pretty well. Now moving into the ordering phase itself, what if you're staring at the menu and nothing's jumping out? You're undecided.
Excellent scenario. The phrase for that is, what do you recommend?
Ooh, I like that one. Puts the ball in their court.
It does, and it's great for a few reasons. One, it helps you decide. Two, it shows you value the waiter's knowledge. They often know the specials, the popular dishes, the chef's pride and joy.
Could lead you to something amazing you wouldn't have picked otherwise.
Exactly. It invites a bit of interaction, leverages their expertise. Highly recommended phrase, ironically.
Good one. Okay, what about dietary needs? This is crucial for some people.
Absolutely critical. The example given is, I'm allergic to nuts. But obviously, you substitute nuts for whatever applies to you, shellfish, gluten, dairy, anything.
You shouldn't feel awkward saying this.
Yeah.
Right, it's essential safety info.
Not at all. It's vital. Restaurants need to know to prepare your food safely. Be clear, be direct. Your health comes first.
Okay, good. Now, for those of us already thinking about the end of the meal while ordering the main course.
Planning ahead. Yes, you might ask, can I see the dessert menu?
Is it okay to ask that early?
Sure, why not? It shows you're interested. Maybe you want to make sure you leave enough room. Or perhaps you'll order dessert later, but you just want to see the options now. It's perfectly fine.
Good to know. And then just a more specific ordering example.
Yeah, the source gives. I'll have the steak, medium rare.
Okay, so that shows being precise. Not just the steak, but how you want it cooked.
Exactly. For things like steak or sometimes fish, specifying how you want it cooked is important. Medium rare, well done, medium. It avoids disappointment and helps the kitchen get it just right for you.
Reduces the chance of sending something back, too, I suppose.
Right. Clarity is good for everyone.
Okay, brilliant. So we've arrived, we've ordered, hopefully enjoyed the food. Now what?
Yeah.
The after-eating phase.
Time to wrap things up. The most essential phrase here is probably, can I get the check, please? Or sometimes people say bill. Can I get the bill, please?
Check or bill, both okay.
Both are perfectly understood in most English-speaking places. North America tends to use check more. Maybe UK Australia uses bill more. But honestly, either works. It clearly signals you're ready to pay.
Polite, direct, got it. What if you're dining with friends and you don't want one person stuck with the whole amount?
The classic dilemma. The phrase you need is, can we split the bill?
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah.
Saves that awkward shuffle when the bill arrives.
Exactly. Ask up front or when you ask for the check. Most restaurants are totally fine with splitting it either evenly or sometimes even by item, though that can get complicated. Asking clearly avoids confusion later.
Very practical.
Yeah.
And finally, just a nice way to finish the interaction.
Always good to end on a positive note if you enjoyed it. It was delicious, thank you.
Simple, sincere.
Yep. A little bit of appreciation goes a long way, acknowledges the effort of the kitchen and the service staff. Always nice to hear.
Definitely. Wow. Okay, so that's a really good collection of phrases covering the whole restaurant visit. Feels much more manageable when you break it down like that.
Okay.
It does, doesn't it? Having the right words for each stage just builds confidence.
Totally. Now, you mentioned earlier we were going to look at a specific grammar point, that difference between would like and want. Let's tackle that.
Right. This is a nuance, but it's one that can really affect how you come across, as we touched on with the dialogue.
Yeah, I'd like versus I want.
Exactly. So the core message is, while I want is perfectly understandable, and you might use it with friends or family in a restaurant setting, interacting with staff, I'd like is generally the better choice.
Why again? Remind us.
It just sounds more polite, less demanding, more like a request. It softens the statement. Think of it as adding a layer of courtesy.
Okay, so it signals respect for the service situation.
Precisely. Our source gives some clear examples to show the contrast. On the polite side, you have, I'd like a coffee.
Or using the other common phrase, I'll have the salmon.
Both perfectly polite, clear, standard ways to order. Notice the contractions again. I'd, very natural in speech.
Right, and the less polite, maybe too direct example.
Yeah. The source uses, I want a pizza.
Okay. And the waiter will understand that, obviously.
Of course, they'll understand the meaning. But it just sounds a bit more abrupt, a little demanding, maybe even slightly childish, depending on the tone.
Okay, so it's not wrong grammar. It's more about the social tone, the level of politeness expected.
Exactly that. It's about navigating the social dynamics of the service interaction. Choosing I'd like or I'll have just smooths that interaction. It's a small word choice that can subtly improve the overall feeling of the exchange.
Makes sense. A little politeness goes a long way, as they say.
It really does, especially when you're maybe in a new cultural setting or just want to make sure you're being considerate.
Okay, good distinction to keep in mind. Now, I know our source materials often include ways for people to actively practice. Did they have that here?
Yes, they did. There was a section specifically called Listen and Repeat Practice. The idea is you hear the phrase, then you say it aloud yourself.
Helps with pronunciation and just getting comfortable saying the words.
Exactly. Builds muscle memory, makes it feel less foreign when you need to say it for real. We can't do the repeat part here, obviously, but we can mention the phrases they focused on.
Yeah, what were they? Give us a flavor.
Okay, so they included, table for two, please. Your basic arrival.
Essential.
Can I get a lemonade? A typical drink order structure.
Using can I get, which is also common, right?
Very common, yes. Another polite way to ask, then I'd like the chicken salad, using that preferred I'd like structure for a food order.
Okay,
Then, can we have the check, please? Asking for the bill politely.
good one.
And finally, it was delicious, expressing that positive feedback.
So a nice mix covering different parts of the meal and different structures.
Exactly. Just reinforcing those key high-utility phrases through repetition.
Makes sense. Was there also, like, a quiz or something to check understanding?
There was a quick quiz, fill-in-the-blank style, good for reinforcing the vocabulary and grammar points we've been discussing.
Want to run through them quickly, see if we remember the answers.
Sure, why not? Number 1 was, I'd the pasta, please.
Okay, based on our discussion, that's got to be like, I'd like the pasta.
Correct. Reinforcing that polite ordering verb. Number 2, can I see the menu?
Thinking ahead, that would be dessert. Can I see the dessert menu?
Got it. Testing that specific meal stage vocabulary. Number 3, we'd like to split the bill.
The practical one for groups, split. We'd like to split the bill.
Yep. Essential payment term. Number 4, I'll fire mayor. The iced tea.
The other common ordering verb, have. I'll have the iced tea.
Right again. Highlighting, I'll have. And the last one, number 5, it was really, thank you.
Expressing satisfaction. Delicious.
There
It
you
was
go.
really delicious.
Perfect. So the quiz just helps lock in those specific words and structures.
Yeah, quick recall. Useful. Does the sources suggest any other kind of practice? More active, maybe?
Yes, there was a mini challenge. This was more about encouraging the listener, you, to actually use the language even if it's just practice.
How did it work?
It basically said, Imagine you're in a restaurant right now. Try saying your order out loud, or even just write it down. Use phrases like, I'd like, can I get, I'll have, and maybe even plan your dessert. For dessert, I'll try.
Oh, I like that. Visualization plus active production.
Exactly. It's about moving from passively knowing the phrases to actively being able to produce them yourself. Mental rehearsal, really, builds confidence for the real thing.
Did they give an example order for that challenge?
They did, yeah. A nice little script putting it all together. Hi, table for two, please. I'll have the grilled salmon and the lemonade. Can we get some water, too? For dessert, I'd like chocolate cake. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. It weaves together arrival, table for two, ordering mains and drinks, I'll have, an extra request, can we get some water, the polite ordering for dessert, I'd like, and politeness markers, please, thank you.
Exactly. It shows how these phrases naturally connect in a realistic sequence, a really good model to adapt with your own food choices.
That seems like a really effective way to practice. You could even just do it in your head while waiting in line somewhere.
Totally. Any active recall helps cement the learning.
Right. So we've really covered a lot of ground here in this very thorough deep dive, from the initial greeting to paying the bill.
We have. We've looked at a sample conversation, broken down keywords like I'd like and I'll have, explored a whole range of useful phrases for arriving, ordering, handling allergies, asking for recommendations, dealing with the check.
And even touched on why that subtle grammar point about would like versus want actually matters in terms of politeness and tone.
And hopefully, by covering it all in such detail, we've shown how mastering these, seemingly simple interactions can really boost your overall confidence when using English.
Absolutely. Whether it's to travel or just feeling more comfortable dining out in an English-speaking city or neighborhood, these are practical, everyday skills.
They really are. It's about making those experiences less stressful and more enjoyable, unlocking smoother communication.
So, to really make all this stick, what's the final takeaway? The homework, so to speak.
The sources strongly recommended actually doing that restaurant role play we mentioned. Don't just think about it.
Right. Write it out. Say it aloud.
Both are great. Writing helps you structure it. Saying it aloud helps with pronunciation and flow. Even better, if you have a friend, practice together. Take turns being the customer and the waiter.
That would really help make it feel natural. Less like reciting learned phrases.
Exactly. The more you actively use the language, even in practice, the more automatic and comfortable it becomes. It moves from conscious effort to habit.
Okay. And wasn't there one final piece of advice, sort of a general tip?
Yes. The source mentioned that if your aim is to sound more like a local to blend in, often the key isn't just perfect grammar, but your overall manner, meaning politeness and friendliness, using please and thank you, smiling, making eye contact. That general positive attitude often counts for just as much, if not more, than choosing the absolutely perfect verb tense. It makes the interaction pleasant.
That's a really great point. Communication is more than just words. Being polite and friendly smooths over potential language bumps.
Definitely. It creates goodwill. So focusing on that alongside the phrases is crucial.
Right. So we've equipped people with the phrases, the grammar nuances, practice ideas, and a reminder about politeness. Seems pretty comprehensive.
I think we've thoroughly explored the menu of ordering food in English.
Indeed. So maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with. Something to chew on.
Well, building on what we've discussed, maybe ask yourself, how does knowing these phrases, understanding these nuances, actually change how you feel about the next time you might need to order in English? Does it feel less daunting, more manageable?
That's a good reflective question. Does it boost your confidence?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And perhaps also think about what other common situations, what other everyday scenarios feel a bit tricky in English. Are there other areas like this where a deep dive into the specific language needed would be helpful? Thinking about that could guide your own learning or even give us ideas for future explorations.
Excellent food for thought. Consider that your takeaway assignment. Thanks for joining us on this extended deep dive into the language of restaurants.